This is the CreaseCast.
All right, everybody, let's brace ourselves. Get ourselves a pot of coffee, some tea, some kind of sage diffusers. Get your diffusers out. Get your cold brew, your nitro black cold brew can. Crack it open. Because, that sounded really good. That sounded crispy on my end.
There we go. That's good.
It sounded real crispy. Let's just ease into this one because fellas, ladies, gents of all ages, races, and sexes, we have to talk about the Canucks today, unfortunately. And
sure.
I mean,
we have to do that. I feel like we could just talk about Shang-Chi. I haven't seen it, but I can pretend I have. If it'll mean
I think you need to see it first because it's not that good.
Really?
I've heard you're a big Marvel guy. It's not great.
I've heard so many people say it's really, really good. So I'm interested to know. And I trust your movie judgment very highly. I'd put you in the upper echelon. So
I am a movie snob, and I use the caveat that it's an enjoyable movie if you turn off your brain, because
okay.
Yeah, it's a movie where no character has an arc, no character develops. It's just they're there for CGI battles, and the CGI battles aren't that interesting.
Which battles go burr.
Yeah, it's like the end battle sequence is like the typical okay, the good guys have blue lasers and the bad guys have red lasers, and that way you can discern who's bad and who's good. And it's like two giant dragons fighting each other. Without getting into spoilers, it's neat concept, but it has nothing to do with the characters, and it's very interesting. But it's if you like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or like kung fu movies, there's a lot of really neat stuff in the movie where you're actually you forget you're watching a Marvel movie and you actually appreciate it for it being actually on its own. But
that's good
because a lot of the problems that we have with the MCU, or I have with the MCU, is that it's just so flat, and everything could be the same series, it could be the same character. It doesn't there's nothing different between it. That's why Guardians of the Galaxy is so good, because it is so different than everything that preceded it.
That's why this one is Ragnarok is really good for especially compared to the other Thor movies. That's
exactly. It's the breaking of the mold is what sells these movies to me. And this movie was just oh God, I don't care about any of this. The character is not interesting. Unfortunately, the actor too, I think, is really bad. He was so monotonous and just
he's from
uninteresting.
Kim's Convenience, isn't he? Isn't he?
He's supposed to be a comedic actor, but he isn't funny in it.
Interesting.
Okay, so I don't want to spoil it, but this doesn't really impact anything in the story. But I'll try to say this in the least spoilery way. But towards the end of the movie, they're having this big giant battle, right? And one of the characters has someone die right in front of them in a very horrific way. And they cut to the actor reacting to this person's death, and it's just stone face, no reaction, just nothing. And then this character does something action-filled, cool, literally 3 seconds later, and then they react to how cool they were in a very Tony Stark, whoa, that was rad kind of way. And it's so jarring because they devote so much time to watching this character die in a horrific way. And then at the end of the movie, they're recanting this battle they experienced, and they're joking about it, oh, so wacky, all these crazy things happened, you wouldn't believe it, there was some dragons, some phoenixes, yada yada yada. And then the guy from Kim's Convenience says, with no hint of acting or emotion or anything, he just stares at this other character and he goes, yeah, we lost a lot of good people that day. And then that's the movie. That's it. And it's if you we all love charismatic people.
Are you sure you weren't watching an airplane version? You accidentally watched the WestJet edition or something where they cut
I did watch the actual movie. It was, I mean, like I said, if you turn your brain off, it's fun. Fun things happen. There's some really funny stuff in it that I actually wasn't expecting. But when you take it for as it is, as an actual Marvel movie, it's really underwhelming. especially because we're coming off of Avengers, like Endgame Part 2.
Endgame.
We're coming off of Loki, which was unreal. Like we're coming off like a lot of very good quality shows. Yeah, like we're coming off really tight, concise stories with like good development and characters, and then to go to like this just CGI mess, it's like, oh
yeah. Marvel's done a really good job of like at the very least, like even their duds aren't like terrible by movie standards. Like
you can still enjoy them.
Yes. And the way that I always put it like is like with the Marvel movies is I feel like there's always a difference between like a film and a movie. Like I feel like those are two very different things. And yeah, what you're describing to me is very much like it's a movie. You're not watching it for the filmography, you're not for the cinematography, you're not watching it for the in-depth like analysis, character analysis. You're watching it because it's just a fun turn off your brain, enjoy something that doesn't make you sad, and especially we need that more than ever these days with the Vancouver Canucks.
Yes, we do. As you can tell by our 10-minute intro in which we talked about MCU movies, folks, the Canucks went on a 3-game road trip where they faced off against Colorado, Vegas, and Anaheim. And when you know it, team no-showed every single game. They got outscored by a whopping 19-6 in 3 games. No one looked good except for Niels Hoglander, who I'm just going to say it right now. He was the Infinity Blocker winner for those 3 games. And
yeah, easily.
I mean, if we're evaluating the season to this point, I think it's still him. Maybe Connor Garland and JT Miller, like for their
over the
production.
Course of the full year.
From year to date.
Okay, and Demko as well. Like obviously he had a rough weekend, but like overall, Demko's what Demko has done is what you could argue what Demko has done to show him exactly how important he is. Like
Demko's basically like he automatically gets the Infinity Blocker. Like we made the jokes like before our first game recap episode, I said to you, like, you can't pick Thatcher Demko for every episode just because he's going to stand on his head and carry this team. Yeah. But now that we're 11 games or 12 games deep, it is very apparent the only way this team has any success is if Thatcher Demko is a Vezina caliber, Hasek-like all-star goalie. And even when he's at that level, it's still not enough. We said this in our last episode together. Like it's like all these guys playing above expected, like Tyler Myers, OEL, Thatcher Demko, these guys playing above where they are expected to be performing at, it still isn't enough for them to win games. And unfortunately, 3 losses in a row, everyone's fired up, caught up on all the podcasts today at work while dealing with the rain. Everyone's mad. Everyone's looking for blood.
Shocker.
I can't believe it.
Oh my God. But Cody, people just, you know what? Like people need to stop being so negative. This is a great team. They're going to turn it around. No, they're not. This is a bad team. This is such a bad team.
Before we get into our real thoughts, we need to address some things because for the last 8 years, or I guess 10 years, let's say for the last decade, if you've been following the Vancouver Canucks, you'll know that it isn't really the GM's fault or the player's fault or the coach's fault that this team is bad. It's the media and their negativity.
That's right. You're so right. I forgot.
If people weren't negative or tweeting out like, you know, like stupid facts like, oh, the team got outscored 19-6 and they've lost 3 straight, or like facts like, oh, they've only won 3 games in regulation. Like facts, you know, are just negative, and that's uncalled for, really. When we don't want facts, what we want is to hear, you know, about, you know, Vasily Podkolzin, like what he watches on Netflix, and you know, Connor Garland, and you know, the Angry Elf thing. Like that's fun and positive.
But also they better not be on social media because then we will destroy you.
Yeah, it's a bit both. We want to know what they're doing on social media, but we also don't, because they shouldn't be on it. They should be practicing to be better players, because otherwise then they don't care about the team, and that's not fair to me, the hockey consumer. And that's all we're really asking for, is that perfect towing the line of the player just doing everything I want them to do and the team just being good, but they're never bad, so it's okay if they're not, but they need to be, because I'm really mad. But your thoughts?
Yeah, they're it's entirely our fault. You and I are newer on the media side of things. We're not we don't necessarily have our big sources yet. We don't necessarily have the insider info yet. We're just writing about what we see. And that's very unfair of us. We shouldn't be right. We shouldn't be using the eye test to judge how good a team is. It's not fair. Because it's not fair. But also we shouldn't be using the advanced stats either, because that's unfair.
That is unfair. That lacks context.
Yeah, exactly. It's too convenient.
It serves your narrative, but
it just serves your narrative, but also it doesn't. It's
like Tyler Myers, has like a horrible expected goals for percentage, but he also racks up a ton of minutes, and that's what matters. It doesn't matter what happens with those minutes, but the lock, like, look how much Darnell Nurse got paid for how many minutes he plays. So he's just, like $6 million is nothing for a guy who bleeds chances against because he sucks at defending in zone.
He's tall. He's tall. That's what we love. And that's all that matters, is that he is tall. Doesn't matter what he does with that tallness. He's just tall, and we like that.
The CreaseCast cares about 2 stats: height and weight. And 3. And social media posts per 60, because if it's too high, then we don't want the player on our team, because that's negative.
But if it's too low, they're boring.
But if it's too low, they're boring, and they probably have attitude problems. And
they're toxic.
Make up a bunch of they're toxic. They're toxic. Sure. That's why Braden Holtby left.
Oh geez. Oh poor God.
Yeah. So anyways, folks, sorry.
Okay, let's get real here.
We're on like a very conceited and very sarcastic.
We're on a very sarcastic both mode today.
Because the problem is for us, I've been like kind of like apathetic to like what this team's direction is for like the last few years. Basically, since I started covering the AHL team, like I just like the writing was on the walls with how poorly of a job they've done developing players, and it's taken a lot of time for other people to come around. And I don't blame people for wanting to be positive, right? Like, I'm not going to fault people for trying to like look at the green grass and be like, there's stuff to have hope for.
There's potential. Yeah.
But the state of the market right now is that everyone is reaching that like apathy stage where they're like, as much as I want something good to happen to this team, I don't trust that it's ever going to happen. So fuck it. Why should I bother caring anymore?
Yep.
And that's kind of depressing. Like, it doesn't do good for you or I. Like, we want listeners, we want people listening to our radio show so they can hear us discussing like a team that's actually good. Like, we want people turning into your Canucks Armies articles and reading about like, why X player played better than X player. I want people to tune into my blog to read about AHL prospects that are never going to get developed. Like, like good teams result in better coverage and more to talk about. And it 100%. Sucks. It's tough for you and I when it's like, okay, we're coming into an episode and our show notes, like, to peel the onion back so you guys know, we have a little Google Doc where we add show notes, and our producer Jacob is absolutely killing it with the show notes for us. We love the work that he puts into them. And it always sucks when we look at the notes and we realize we're talking about the same things every week with this team right now, because the problems aren't getting fixed. They're not getting addressed internally. And it certainly doesn't look like there's any incentive or actions by the management team or the ownership group to change the team externally. So you're stuck in this gray space where, why are you following the team if you know they're not going to take any chances to improve the team the way it needs to be improved? And I'm sure you have some opinions on how it could be improved, because whatever they've been trying for the last 8 years hasn't really been working. So I'll move to you, Lachlan. Just how are you feeling? The state of Lachlan as he swigs his can of cold brew, getting ready.
I'm preparing here. Here we go.
Yeah, that's fair, because you kind of need the caffeine, man. Like I shot back my bevy too. It's what we need to do. We need the energy to go on these giant tangents about how poorly this team has been constructed.
Yeah. So here we go. Let's start with the fact that, okay, on Sunday, I was watching the Canucks Ducks game, and I'm watching, again, like a little bit, again, another kind of behind the scenes sort of thing. I use TweetDeck when I'm watching games. I use it because as it's
you know who also does? Thomas Drance.
I am Thomas Drance and Taj
And Taj 1944. Hey, so am I.
Weird. Hey, whoa, what? Crazy. We're also Santa Claus. This is yeah, and I was watching TweetDeck. I have a list. Of where I keep like Canuck follows mostly. Like I keep the media, kind of like the media or like significant fan kind of like list, and then I have like my home screen where I kind of see a lot of the other Canuck tweets that come by.
Yeah.
So I have a good mixture of like a little bit of everybody.
Yeah.
And I have never seen it so dead on a game. Excuse me. On a weekend game during the regular season. It might as well have been a ghost town. Like there were still people tweeting. Like there were still some people talking, like the people like me who are
the diehards, the ultra diehard types.
Diehard, too stupid to find a better hobby. I don't know, whatever you want to call us. We're watching and we're not paying attention, and we're paying attention. But even I checked out like by the third period. Like I wasn't paying attention. Like I straight up didn't care. Like they were losing 4-1. I'm like, well, this game's over. And I still had it on. Like I still had it, like was listening to it, but I was doing something completely different. I was not paying a single lick of attention. I didn't care because they suck. They're a bad team. And you were doing, I think you were clipping, you were watching an Abbotsford game. So I
was watching an Abbotsford game. And so I missed most of the game. And I put on Twitter at one point to post a clip of, I think, Vinny Arsenault, like his headshot of something. And I noticed at that point, no one was really like, my feed is mostly Canucks fans. And I saw nothing about the game except for, I think, a tweet from like JPad about like the penalty kill getting scored on. And I was like, oh, I guess it's a quiet night. And then I asked you, and it was like, oh, they're shit. They're playing awful. And so I was like, oh, so people just don't care anymore.
No, and even if they had they done well, like they scored the first goal of that game. Like, oh my God, they did it second game in a row. Great job, guys. They like there was nobody there from puck drop. Like it wasn't a case of like as soon as like the lead got up or something, people checked it left. It was a case of no one was even there to start. It was dead. And that is unusual for this market. Like, I think that is extremely unusual for this market. Like, even in the worst years with this team, for a game in November to be that dead on social media is a telling sign. Like, you might think, oh, we read too much into, like, social media and what goes on there. Especially Twitter, because Twitter is a case where it's like, it's very much your feed is very like what you see. It's an echo chamber if you're not like doing a job of like curating and actually making sure you're following like a varying group of people and like ideas and whatnot. So it can become a bit of an echo chamber, but it was unusually dead and other people noticed. That wasn't just my takeaway. A lot of people noticed, hey, there is nobody here who gives a shit. Like nobody cares about this game. And why should they? The team sucks. Like it wasn't just, again, for us, like it's not about the fact that they lose. It's how you lose. It's how you're losing games. It's how you're winning games. The Canucks walked into Colorado, got an Avalanche team that was playing without Nathan MacKinnon, their best player by a country mile. Yes, they have Mikko Rantanen. Yes, they have Gabriel Landeskog. Yes, they have Cale Makar and Bowen Byram. They have great players. But they're missing an MVP caliber player on their roster. And the Canucks walk in and get their ass absolutely kicked. Like 30 different ways. They were obliterated. Then you go into the game against Vegas. They actually score some goals. They actually get some offense going. But they get obliterated on the score sheet again by a Vegas team that I think in the early going looked awful. Like, they look bad. They're an AHL team basically right now. They're missing half their players. Like, they got Mark Stone back, but it was only his first game back. He was literally came off of IR that day and played. He was not at 100%. He was maybe at like 90 something, but he's not 100% top of his game, Mark Stone. And he came in and played amazing. And he completely walked the Canucks. They're missing Alex Tuck because he got traded to Buffalo, who had torched the Canucks in previous years. That team looked nothing like the group that the Canucks had played in the bubble last time they saw that team 2 years ago. And in the early going, the Canucks did a good job of actually keeping up on it. And then the Knights took over anyway. Just they were like, oh, okay, it's time to take over now. It was like the Canucks could there was nothing they could do. There was nothing the Canucks could do to stop it. And then there's the Anaheim game. Again, I think Anaheim is winning. Yeah, they've won a lot of games, but they're not as good as their record indicates. I think they're better than I anticipated. Like, in general, I would say that my opinion on how good they are has changed. But I still think they're middle of the pack. They're not like an absolute titan of the division, I don't think. And yet the Canucks made them look just like it. Like, they walked all over them after they scored the Canucks scored the first goal. Nils Höglander, again, only guy who showed up. And then the Ducks just took over, walked all over them. And rookies were just taking over. I think it was Jamie Drysdale had a really good game. Or sorry, Trevor Zegras. I forget. They got a couple good guys there, but
Trevor like a 3-point night or something like that.
Oh yeah, it was a disaster. And then Mr. Booth was like, you have 60 seconds to reply to me. Like, you have 60 seconds to reconsider this. And I'm like, look, all I'm considering is what a great comedy tour I'm gonna start preparing for. But like, okay, and it comes down to this, like. It'd be one thing if this was a flash in the pan. It'd be one thing if this was just a blip on the radar. But no, this is not a blip. This is 8 years. This is the culmination of 8 years of terrible management coming to roost. It's coming back to bite you in the ass. This team is no good, and it's because of the fact that they have a terrible general manager. Jim Benning cannot build a hockey team. And the fact that he still has a job is honestly asinine. This guy should have been fired years ago. The fact that he's still here is insane. Like, you guys know me. I'm not super confrontational about stuff like this. Like, I'm so mad. Like, this is like, it boggles the mind. And then you see people like going like, oh, you know what? Oh, I see what the problem is. You got to fire the coach. What is he going to do? What's he going to do? He's given a crap roster.
Like, I've said that 100 times. Like, John Cooper himself could not come to this team and like suddenly make them a contender. Like, you can't do anything. He would never
want to, because this team sucks.
Yeah.
Management sucks.
What is a Jack Adams winner? Like, what is Rod Brindamore? What is John Cooper? What are they going to do? What is Bruce Cassidy going to do with Madison Bowie as your third right shot defenseman, and your left shot defenseman is Kyle Burrows on his offside, or Brad Hunt, who's looked completely awful?
Jack Adams means Jack Squat in this case.
Yeah.
I think is the perfect way of putting it. It doesn't matter who the coach is. That's the big problem. Like, okay. Like, again, I feel like I have to clarify this every single time. I'm not like out here being like, oh, Travis Green is the greatest coach to grace God's green earth kind of thing. Like, it's not that. Right. Like, I'm not saying that there aren't potentially better options out there than Travis Green in the long run in the grand scheme of things down the line. The problem is that as long as Jim Benning is still the one choosing that coach and who it is, it does not matter. It does not matter who you bring in. It is because you're going to get the same results every single damn time, because he doesn't know how to do his job. He has been trying for 8 years to figure it out, and he still hasn't. And I'm starting to think he might never figure it out. And
it's kind of, this season is basically like, how many off seasons have we been like, you know, all these bets eventually need to either pay off with playoff victories, or they're just not going to pay off. And after back-to-back off seasons where the team pushed all their chips in, traded their first round picks away, traded away a bunch of expiring deals for a bunch of bloated contracts. You just kind of knew, like they were basically saying, with this move, I have planted my foot and said, this is the team, the roster that is going to make it for us. And I don't know if planting your flag on OEL and Connor Garland was it, Chief. Like Connor Garland's been great. He's been like really good. OBL's played above expectations, but for $7.85 million, being on your worst production pace in your NHL history as OEL, or, you know, Connor Garland looking like the only good forward on some nights and then on other nights being worthy of being benched for an entire period, like that's not good enough. And the fact that those were the major bets to push the team over the edge, like that's terrible. And I'm with you. I'm like, okay, Benning should have probably been gone years ago. He should have been gone when he had that comment about how the Sedin's contracts were the reason why he couldn't ice a better team. Like he blamed the generational talents, Hockey Hall of Fame shoe-in, Ring of Honor shoe-ins, retired jersey shoe-ins, all of the above, all the superlatives you want
No,
for
you
them.
didn't. No, you didn't. They even said they didn't care if you wanted to go full rebuild multiple times. They didn't care because they just want to see the team do well, because they're literally the nicest people in the world who would rather put team success, like the franchise's success, over any sort of personal glory, because the Sedins are that incredible. And Jim Benning's out here being like, oh, it's their fault. We had to try and win. No. Shut up. Like, shut up.
No one asked you. They did not ask you to go sign Louis Eriksson to a $6 million deal. They didn't ask you to go sign Verbata to a 2-year, $11 million contract. Like, they didn't ask for that. They were completely fine with whatever direction, so long as it helped the team. That's their whole MO.
Jared McCann for Branson.
I mean, technically, the Sedins were probably some of the people that were like, yeah, McCann has attitude issues, but the reaction from the team should have been, let's send him to junior and let him work through his issues, and then we'll bring him up slowly.
I feel like there's still a lot we don't know about that particular situation, because also like why was because Jake Virtanen was also in that group, so we never got, and so what happened there? Like, I don't know. Was it like, well, I feel like there are something we'll find, out, like when Jared McCann retires and is asked a question about it, like in 10, 15 years from now,
when he's on Spit and Chicklets and 90-year-old Paul Bissonnette is still talking about how fucking dope his 20s were. Yeah, I'm sure they'll ask him then what exactly happened in Vancouver. And I'm sure there is going to be a tell-all for this era of Canucks history that is going to just be the most infuriating thing to read about. What's going to come.
Well, you know what's infuriating is we've already gotten a couple, and it didn't matter. Like, Pucks on Net had Sean Mathias on their podcast talking about how
team didn't even talk to him, even though they said they did.
Talk to him. Literally players, like terrible players, like not terrible. I shouldn't be so mean, but Tom Sestito is when Tom Sestito is able to dunk on your general manager.
Anti-vax Tom Sestito, ultra right wing Trump guy Sestito. Yeah, that's a bad look.
Yeah, but he should not have the moral high ground at any point.
Yeah,
and here you are.
Quick caveat: when we're saying awful or bad players, like in reference to NHL players, we're not talking about. We're meaning relative to like the stars of the NHL, not all of hockey's player base. Because if Tom Sestito entered a beer league game, he would fucking dummy every single player on the ice. Because to get to that level, you still need the speed and the skill to actually play pretty well.
I mean, in that particular case, I might doubt that, but sure. I see the point. I get where you're coming from. I get the point you're trying to make. Yes, correct.
God, this is really bad. But a kid from my high school was who did he play for? He played for like the Red Deer Rebels or something like that, and he was like an overager. Like he was in the BCHL when he was like 17 and 18, but he didn't have good production. Then he went to to the WHL when he was like 21, and he like lit up the league and was like really good. And there's a story from my buddies where they were short players for their like, just rec hockey or whatever. And so they asked him like, hey, can you come play for us? Just don't tell anyone like who you are. And he came in and he had like 11 points in like a single game.
God,
and it was like against like people like their age or whatever. It just like wasn't even close. And that was like a kid who didn't get drafted. So you just have to, you just know like a Tom Sestito, like some guy who did actually make it to the AHL, and like the NHL would probably just like crush.
That's true. Yeah, very true. If I was the goalie on the other end of one of those ringer games, I would be livid. Yeah. I'd be livid. I mean, granted, I would do very well.
This is good.
I would shut him down. I famously kept Canadian Winter Club teams to less than 5 goals when the rest of that's actually literally literally people like in one of the hockey organizations I played for in California, I'm most remembered for the one time they had the Hollyburn Winter Club from North Van, Martin Jones Winter Club, I believe, among many NHL players, I believe. Their team came up to our tournament that we had in Santa Rosa, and of course they absolutely obliterated like every team by like every other team there by like 13 more than like every game they won was by double digits in that tournament. They had to run running clock, except for our game. We were the only team. I was the goalie in net for that whole game. They wanted to put me in net as the Canadian goalie against the Canadian team. And
that's why they signed you to tier 3 hockey.
And literally, I held them to 5 and was pretty proud of that, except for the fact that there was one goal where I kind of flubbed like a dump in, like on the shot. I happened to just drop my stick at a wrong time, and as I was like grabbed it mid-air, it just kind of like caught me at the wrong angle, and I ended up going in. And I was like, God, I could have kept him to 4. Like I was so mad. But like to the point where like literally their players were coming up to me and were like, you're pretty good. I'm like, thanks. Thanks, guys.
We're gonna find the good game sheet for that day, and we're gonna print it out and frame it for you.
I think amazing. I do think I ended up with over 50 shots on net. So it was like I posted a 900 save percentage in that game because it was, but we did a good job as a group. But either way,
so you basically played like Thatcher Demko this weekend, where he stopped something like, I don't know, 90 shots, but it wasn't enough because they still gave up 16 goals or 19.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this weekend we saw exactly what happens when Thatcher Demko isn't able to play at, like you said, Vezina caliber level or Hart Trophy level,
where he's just playing fine.
Where he's just playing okay. Where he's just playing fine. That's a great way of putting it. Fine. And even Halak too. Like Yara Halak did fine. Like it was a case of, oh my God, if they don't have ultimate amazing goaltending, they are screwed every single night. And this is this team. Like this team has the management team is only itself to blame, and the ownership has only itself to blame. Like again, has Travis Green's coaching been great? No, probably not. Like there have definitely been some issues, but there's nothing he can really change. Like there's nothing he can do to bring. He can't bring. There's no one coming to save them. Out of like another league. Like there's no first round picks waiting anymore. They're gone because they traded them. Like what do you like? There's nothing there, and there's nothing there except for what's already there. And like you said, and we said this multiple times on the show this season of the fact of like going into the year, we had high hopes, high expectations for the team. We said they're a playoff team most likely. We said they're a group that should be competing in that top group, especially the Pacific being a little bit like on the weaker side. In fairness, the Pacific has been a lot better than I think either of us anticipated. And specifically the Kings and the Ducks have been a lot better than we went into the year thinking. Calgary has definitely been a lot better than
really well.
They have a lot of shutouts. Holy cow. Like they're doing very well. And Vegas is going to get better, as you know, eventually. Like clearly they're going to get better once they get healthy again. Now you got Jack Eichel in there. And we went into the season saying, okay, they have a top 9 in theory. They've got a top 9 again. They don't have a defense, but they have a top 9, and that's fine. And they could win a few games here and there off of that. And with the coupled with the weak division, they could probably maybe make a playoff run out of this. Is this good enough? No. Is this what they've got to work with? Yep. This is it. This is what you have. You better make the playoff. And especially because, again, they tell us they're a playoff team all the time. So we went in expecting them to be a playoff team. And holy cow, they are not.
No.
God, no. They're not. No. If they made I think what was the quotes going up where it was the projections going up where they have to play at a 90 something
yeah,
or the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's they have to go 38, 21, and 7 or something to have a chance.
Something absolutely
equals 100-point pace if stretched out to 82 games.
Now,
which is,
again,
they're not a 100-point team.
Hockey is nuts, and they might magically pull that out of their ass. It is totally a possibility just based on how they've actually done studies as well on how hockey, their luck has more impact in hockey than I think any other major sport. It's one of those leagues where it's crazy how often that plays in. Sure. But I mean, based on what we've seen over the last 3 games, frankly, the things that we figured out are this is the team. Maybe they're not this bad, on a nightly basis, but they're not good. They're very clearly not good.
Yeah.
And there is already people are saying, oh, it's too early. It's so early in the season. I think they're 16 games in. Hey, guess what? Five more games. They're at 21. That's a quarter of your season gone. That's a quarter of the year.
It was you
that's not nothing.
And that was you that pointed out in our last episode where most of the time where the team sits on November 30th is where they ended up at the end of the year. And very rarely do we see that much fluctuation between teams until then, with the odd exceptions being, like the LA Kings or St. Louis Blues, who famously, and that's almost infamously at this point, because I'm sure teams like the Canucks look at St. Louis Blues miracle run after Christmas where they just went on a huge tear, 100-point pace over the stretch to get themselves into playoffs and go on a miracle run to win their first Stanley Cup. I'm sure the Canucks looked at that, and this is the quote that made the rounds last year, which was, you get to playoffs and anything can happen. And that attitude, which we complained about back then, and everyone said, oh, you're whining too much about a quote. This is why we were mad about it, because that philosophy of just hoping for the best and hope that you get there has led to the team being one of the worst in the league through 16 games played. And just looking at the standings right now, the teams that they're with are 2 teams that are actively tanking for picks. And
God, that's so indicting. That's such a that is incredible. The fact that you're in the conversation with the goddamn Arizona Coyotes, and you have a worse penalty kill than the Coyotes. Guys, what are we doing?
Well, it's because the Canucks traded them their best penalty killer.
Oh,
but
true. That's right.
But the issue is for some of those teams, Chicago is obviously just really bad. They're in their 2014 stage of the Canucks where they're trying one last kick at the can, and they invested a lot to try and get that one last kick at the can, and it backfired, which is wonderful because fuck that organization. But then with them are teams that are underperforming because of goalie issues, like the Montreal Canadiens. And I mean, I guess you could argue the Seattle Kraken, because on paper, like the Canucks, on paper, they have a decent roster. Their D-core is pretty good, but Philip Grubauer can't stop a puck. And they spent a lot of money on Philip Grubauer, and he's been terrible for them.
I'm stunned at how bad he's done. He's really looked bad. And maybe it's just another case of a guy goes from a playing in front of the Colorado Avalanche defense to playing in front of a more normal, a much more normal looking one in the Kraken, and that's how it goes. But to kind of just recap what you said here, the Canucks are in the conversation with a team that's actively tanking, the Eugene Melnick-owned Ottawa Senators, an expansion team.
To be fair, the Ottawa Senators did say their rebuild was over. So if we're going by their own standards, they're also in the Canucks tier of guys who don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Right, but yeah, very true. But that's that. All right, fair enough. I'll give you that one. Okay, so Ottawa, expansion team, the team that does not have their star goalie, their star captain, and multiple injuries to important players, possibly for some of which might never come back. And the team that's literally been the like an embarrassment of a franchise and has literally had the worst season imaginable in every sort of capacity. They somehow have two less points than you.
You know what's even more shocking to me too is that the team immediately above the Canucks in the league standings are the Dallas Stars, right? And the Dallas Stars only have a single regulation win after 13 games.
They've been
but they
really
still
bad.
have more points than them because they're still winning. Like they have a higher points percentage in 13 games than the Canucks do in 16. Yeah. And the teams that are above them are all teams that you would make the argument that injuries and like some regression is going to come their way and they're going to start flying up the standings. Like Colorado, the Islanders, Pittsburgh, like those three teams are probably going to shoot up the standings. And then you're going to see teams like Columbus, San Jose, or Buffalo, like these teams that arguably are overperforming right now, they're going to fall to earth a bit. But
a little bit, yeah.
But the Canucks have looked this bad since the season started. Even in preseason, they did not look good either. And so the only positive regression you'd hope for is that Elias Pettersson clicks. But through 16 games, nothing about his game has indicated that it's just going to suddenly solve itself.
Yeah, I'm officially worried on that front. Like, I'm officially there.
It's very worrying that, like, I mean, maybe he just lost it. Like, it would be wild and very Canuck luck if Pettersson had 2.5 great seasons and then just, like, fell off a cliff and just was not a star anymore.
I don't know if it would go to, like, that length necessarily, but, like, in terms of this season, like, I feel like there's a loss. Like, there have been a couple players that have had... I feel like there have been a couple players of like Pettersson like comparables that have had kind of that year where it's gone completely wrong in just the worst way. And then but then they come back like the next year or something. And suddenly not only are they back to normal, they've like, yes, William Nylander's a very good example.
He held it with his contract. It's like same thing. Like he held out way longer for his contract. And then when he finally started the season, he was completely behind the 8 ball and looked like shit. Pettersson and Hughes got their contracts done in time for like the final game of preseason. And they still look kind of behind the 8 ball for the most part.
Hughes looks better. Hughes looks much better, I think.
I would argue that Hughes has actually looked kind of like better than his first season, his rookie form. Like I think he's way better.
Yeah, he's looked a lot. He's again, literally one of those cases where if the team was doing well, front page how good he would be, all-star, like already being like, this guy's a lock for Team USA or the Olympic or the All-Star game, like those things. Like we if this were a better year, that we'd be talking about that, but we can't because his performances and the performances of other players like him, like Höglander, like Demko to an extent, are being masked by how bad overall the team is.
Yeah, it's it's a little concerning if you're a Canucks fan where you're like, okay, what can I look forward to in the next month or so? Because
I know.
Do you have an answer?
Yes.
What is it?
Nothing. There's nothing to look forward to. You're screwed.
Come on. Let's give the fans something.
All screwed. This is me now. This is what I've become. I have no hope left. It's all gone. Okay, that's not true. Here's the thing. There is some. Okay, literally the one hope I have is, God, if you're lucky, they will get a new general manager. That's all you can hope for right now. Like, and again, God, like there was the one quote that came out earlier today that just like there were a couple things that came out today that just enraged me, like on a whole other level. Like, okay. Here we go. This is from Taj, 1944. This was Satyar Shah.
Your own account.
My account. Yes, exactly. It is Twitter for Android, and my phone is an Android. So there you go.
Shit.
I've been found. Yeah. So to Satyar Shah today was saying the organization and power brokers are essentially in a state of shock. They were caught off guard by this dialogue happening. Right now, it seems unlikely change will happen before Wednesday. And I hear that. And I hear that to myself. And I just think, what? How were you caught off guard? If you were caught off guard by the team not being good, the only reason that it would be possible is because you weren't paying attention. It was very maybe you didn't expect them to get their destroyed in 3 straight games. Maybe that came a little out of left field. But for you to look at the results you've gotten out of the first part of the season, including a homestand where you won 2 games out of 7, and you're saying, I'm flabbergasted. I could have never seen this coming. A road trip before that where you lost to Buffalo and Detroit, and you're shocked by this development. It means you either weren't paying attention or you're being purposely obtuse, and you're trying to pretend there's no problem.
Or you've been sold a bill of goods by your GM that you've stuck by for 8 years, and you
don't want to admit you're wrong
because you don't want to look stupid in front of your family members who are also co-owners of the team. So you're like, I can't believe this has happened. They're like, surely the boys will come back and outperform how they've been performing so far. Surely.
Now, sure, yes, we're gonna be on top of this. Now, excuse me, I have a football game to go see.
The Raiders are in town.
Yeah, I'm in Vegas, and the Raiders, and I want to go see the Raiders game. A team for him to go see any team, it just had to be the one that fired their coach midway through and has done well regardless. That has done better without him. God, that's the worst team for him to go see right now. Geez, it's so poetic. Okay. Here's the thing, and I saw some people being like, "You're making people are making too big a deal about the whole." So if you weren't listening, or if you didn't hear the story, essentially Francesco Aquilini was on the road trip with the Canucks, with the team, not just happened to be happened to fly to see them play one game and then another, and that was it. Thing. I'm pretty sure he was on the flights with the team. He was traveling with them.
That's kind of how they made it sound, right? Yeah.
That was the indication, is that he was traveling with the team. He's at the game in Colorado. He is at the game in Vegas. He then stays in Vegas as the team goes off to Anaheim, and then goes to see an Las Vegas Raiders game. Instead, he stays in. And remember, there was the whole thing last year where I think I forget which Canuck wife or girlfriend it was, who claimed that he had been in Vegas the entire season or something.
That's right.
That came out, which is why that also caught me. It caught my eye when it said, "Oh, he's on the trip to Vegas." Interesting. Whether or not, but then the fact that he he's a rich person who can do what he wants. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But for him to watch the first 2 games of that road trip and then decide he does not care to go see the third in the middle, well, again, they got scored on 14 times in 2 games. It means that he does not care. It means he doesn't care. That is exactly what that means. You can go see a Vegas Raiders game anytime you want. You could go and do that on a weekend where the Canucks aren't playing. That would be I get that it's easier because the team happens to be there and you can fly with them there. But you could still, you're clearly well off enough that you could go and just do it whenever you want it. Whenever you feel like. So for him to literally not care, and for him to go to that game while the Canucks are doing as badly as they are, tells me literally everything I need to know about how this team, about the accountability of the team, which is that there is none. They don't care. They literally could not care less, including the fact that like you're getting to the point now where, again, they're suddenly shocked by this happening. And there was like a whole thing I think that also came out today where apparently the team is waiting to see what happens on the next game, in the game tomorrow against Colorado.
Which tracks though with like you gotta.
Oh, it totally
Lachlan,
tracks.
You're being a little negative here because at least this organization is sticking to its messaging that they addressed last year, which is they live day to day. And on a day-to-day basis, Francesco Aquilini said, you know what? They're playing like shit in the first 2 games I watched. I'm going to go see an NFL game. And if they lose the next one, oh well, I'll decide what happens next after the next game when I get home, kick my feet up, and really start to think about the numbers and how bad the team is doing. Because that's the day-to-day attitude. And
I found the other quote. I did find the other quote. Satya Shah said, organization is nervous about crowd reaction on Wednesday. Or is the next game Wednesday? I thought it might be Tuesday, but it is a Wednesday. They got a couple days. Right. Nervous about crowd reaction on Wednesday, but they're also hoping it's not that bad. In the past, they have thought social media is more negative than the season ticket holders. Negative reaction or empty seats on Wednesday could lead to change, which reminds me, you posted a picture of how many seats are on sale still for this game. Like, not resale. Like, there are some resale.
There are resales, but there's a lot of just general sales available. Like usually and on midweek or games in the middle of the week, like they do pretty bad numbers for ticket sales just because like it's awkward. But middle of the week, Wednesday, you usually see a bit of an uptick. But that upper bowl in the picture, if you go see my account at Cody Sievertson on Twitter, against Colorado, a team that's got like Nathan McKinnon, like a team that actually rocks as like an away team kind of game you'd want to go see. Like, don't forget, like we're only 3 years removed from that wild 7-6 game between the Avs and the Canucks. That was like one of the most fun games ever.
Do you remember who scored the OT goal in that game?
It was Derek Pouliot, wasn't it?
That's right. It was Derek Pouliot.
Yeah. So
I was at a Barracuda game that night, and I had it on the TV. Like, I was watching it on the TV in the SAP Center press box, and I was like, no freaking way. It was hilarious.
That rocks. But yeah, so in theory, a game like that should sell very well, but the picture I posted on my Twitter account tells a different story. So they're going to see an upper bowl that's usually the only area that is packed. It's empty. Like there's one section that is maybe 25% full. It looks grim.
Yeah, and I can also tell you, I guess insider info, I guess, on this tech in a way. I'm in school right now, and one of the things the Canucks do every single year, when people are allowed in the building, is there's a student program for tickets. I forget exactly what it's called. I'm blanking on there's an official name for it, but essentially Student Rush. Thank you.
Yeah.
Where essentially where it's literally a thing where if you're a post-secondary student in BC, in the greater Vancouver area, so like UBC, BCIT, SFU, whatever you're going to, I'm sure there's more in there as well. They basically will text you on the day of or the day before a game and offer you discounted tickets for the game because they just want to get people in the building, and they just want to fill up the seats. I know multiple people who have been to a lot of games this year because usually Student Rush tickets get them in there before they're gone. Like it's very much you better hope you see the in a notification quick because they're gonna go fast kind of thing, right? Because everybody and their friend wants to go see, right? And they come in pairs of 2, so you can take 2 people. I know a lot of people who have not just like been getting tickets for nearly every single game. They've been getting tickets for nearly every single game in the lower bowl, like lower bowl seats being offered to them for okay, like the price for each ticket, $40 for tickets that I'm pretty sure retail at closer to about like $170 or something like that, something crazy like that. Because I've seen people who've literally gotten tickets like 5 rows from the glass for $40 a ticket. So 80 in total, 80 in total for 2. For tickets that normally would cost for a pair like $200, like maybe more. Like that is how desperate they are for people to buy tickets. It is that bad. I've been offered tickets every single game. I don't have the money to go. If I wasn't necessarily doing media stuff, I might be more inclined to like, yeah, spend my income on that. Go for it every single game. But God, this team is like, in a way, you kind of are like, oh my God, people, even if they offer you tickets, why would you want to go? And B, maybe don't. The team's bad. Don't give them money. Like, and then you hear like again, the priorities thing. There's the whole thing. Like I showed you the clip earlier in the show before the show started about how
they're
about
mad
how
about the negativity in the media.
Again, yeah, like Donnie and Dolly, shout out to Don Taylor and Rick Dollywell. We're talking about how after their Friday show, they got some angry messages from the Canucks being like, we don't like this negative press you're giving us right now.
Yeah.
And full marks to Rick Dollywall and Don Taylor for being like, well, I'm sorry, what do you want us to say? The team's bad. Like, what are we supposed to? We're not going to lie to people. The team's garbage. And yeah, it's like, are you like again, it shows you exactly where their priorities lie. It's like they don't care. They don't care about the actual.
They care about image. That's it.
They care about image. And even that they don't care that much because they're like, you know what would be the easiest image thing to do is get rid of the general manager right now and restore some balance. No, we're gonna wait to see how people react. Literally what they're saying is, and I saw somebody tweet like in the replies to that original message was literally they want somebody to chant like fire Benning at the game.
Yeah. Like they're begging the audience to do it. Like then they're we'll have a reason to do it.
Which is
kind of fucked up.
So yes, like God, like for all my disliking of Jim Benning's general manager work, he's also like, and you want to talk about the whole human being thing, like in there, like you're gonna make him literally have to sit through a game where people are chanting for him to be fired just to do it. That's awful.
Cruel. Like
that's cruel.
It's quite ironic too because it's like he was literally just in media with Dan Riccio and Sportsnet 650 being like, you know, this guy's got a family, you know, don't be, if you're gonna insult anyone, insult me, like diss me, don't be mean to Jim. You know what's fucking mean is being like, hey, instead of just like doing my job and addressing an issue where there is one, I'm going to let the public decide. Like,
I'm literally gonna have the public execute you for me. Basically.
Yeah, like so then I don't look like the bad guy for listening. It's
literally the emperor doing like the whole thumb,
the thumbs up.
Yeah, the thumb down, like in the Colosseum. Like that's like that's exactly what they want, which is
toxic,
awful, terrible. That's no wonder no wonder no one wants to come here. No wonder no other person wants to work for your organization.
No wonder so many long-standing employees of the organization left after the 2019-20 season.
Players. Oh my God, everybody. Nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole because of how
Braden Holtby and his brilliant quote saying, my 6 months in Vancouver felt like 4 years. Like, that's telling. People don't, like, players themselves don't make up bullshit like that just for like clickbait. Like they say that because that's what they felt. Nate Schmidt opted to go to Winnipeg, one of probably the only players in the entire history of the NHL over the last 20 years to voluntarily waive his no move clause to go to Winnipeg to play.
Which, to be fair, I've heard Winnipeg is actually like pretty nice, and it's like gets an unfair rap for what it is. But like,
I've been there in February, man. It's
okay.
It's rough.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure it's not great in the winter, but like, yeah.
Just saying.
Thankfully, they don't play hockey. Thankfully, no one plays hockey during the winter.
Winnipeg can't possibly be bad when you're making $6 million a year. Like
that's exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're a well-to-do person, like I'm sure Winnipeg's
possibly
great.
Be that bad. Yeah, I bet it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just feel like there's so many telltale signs from the last like 2 years alone where it's like all of these people being like, I don't want to work for the Aquilini Group anymore. There's been meddling. There's like, even just now, like the fact that the ownership group is leaving it up to the audience, like the paying audience, to decide for them, tells me that like they're meddling in like the fact that they want to appear like, oh, we don't care about hockey affairs, but we're going to fly on the plane to go watch the Canucks play in 2 games. Then we're going to go do whatever the fuck we want. And then when we actually have to address problems with the organization, we don't want to look like the bad guys. So we're going to let the fans dictate what we do for us. So we don't look like the bad guys, but we're responding to peer pressure.
Simultaneously hanging the fans out to dry in a sense of furthering the whole stereotype of Vancouver being a toxic market.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, cool. You're literally throwing everyone under the bus. You're literally you're not taking responsibility. That's not taking responsibility. That's literally
it is incredibly bold. It's incredibly bold to be like, in 1 month that the media is too negative and they're too hard on your GM, and then to give the media and public every single reason to be negative towards your GM when the team is playing like shit, and saying we encourage that behavior. Like,
but also we don't.
It's like our sarcastic intro where we're like making fun of, you can't be too negative, but you got to be negative. You can't go on social media, but you have to be, or you're boring and we hate you. Like that's the kind of like fence sitting that they're trying, which just pisses fans off more than anything. I realistically, I think what's going to happen is no one's going to go to the game, and they'll probably eke out like a 3-2 shootout win, and nothing will happen. Like
nothing will change.
If
I'll believe it when I see it.
If the 2-7 home trip wasn't enough to get change done with the upper management group, then
nothing's changing.
Those three straight losses are nothing then to them, because they don't care. That's 2-10. Like, what are we talking about?
The thing that blows my mind about all this is it's like we always talk about like this Canucks ownership group like being very much a group that's like the dollar matters, like the money being brought in is what matters most. But at the same time, like, there's no way there's no way they're making a lot on the Canucks right now. So like, what's the point? Like, are you actually like, there's no way this team is actually like turning a decent profit right now, is there? Like, maybe compared to last year when there was no one there, but like, I have no idea what. Again, I have no idea what the end game is here. What is your end result here? Are you trying to make money? Are you trying to win a Stanley Cup? Because you can do both. You can do one or the other. But somehow right now you're doing neither. Somehow you are both losing money and trying not to win. And and trying not to win in a sense. Like, you're doing everything in your power to stick to your guns on a losing team that has been losing for 8 years. Like, and again, I posted the comparables. I don't know what happened to this ownership group, because at one point they really cared. Like, they genuinely clearly cared about the results of the team, and they cared about putting a winning product on the ice. Because in their first 8 years, they took over as like the primary owners of the team, like sole owners of the team, 06-07. So Luongo's first season in Vancouver. From that point on, for the next 8 years, they won 6 division titles. They made the playoffs 6 times. They won 2 President's Trophies as the best team in the NHL, and they went to a cup final. And they had multiple players who are superstars in the NHL, right?
Seems like so long ago.
Oh my, well, it is because again, the kicker being the fact that this is Jim Benning's 8th season. He has now been in charge of this team for half of this ownership group's tenure. Half.
My car didn't last as long as his tenure.
No.
I got my car in 2015 and it died faster than his awful run as GM. Like
that is so telling. Yeah, and again, Jim Benning has outlasted, I think, every GM except for Pat Quinn, maybe, I think, at this point. I think he is the last stumbling block. And yet, all the Canucks have to show for it in that time is 2 playoff appearances. 2. That's it. No title, no division titles, no nothing. Like a 1 playoff series win and a qualifier round series win. Cool, great. In a bubble playoffs. Like, good for you. You've done like what are we doing here? Like again and again for all the people that think this is like what we want to talk about, like because again, really every time the Canucks are doing bad, people are like, "Oh, you media just want them to be bad." Do you know how hard it is to like find a reason to talk about this team? I hate having to talk about how bad the team is every single year. Every single year except for like one. I had to talk about how garbage they are. And like, oh, but maybe they can turn it around. But I know they won't because it's the same people. Like, it's like every time I have to do like the same article. And I'm sick of it. Like, I'm sick of having to watch this terrible team never do a damn thing about why they're bad. Like, it's like I think you bring it up all the time. It's the Eric Andre Hannibal thing where they Eric Andre shoots Hannibal. It's like, Hannibal. Why are we so bad? Like
and then they sign a bunch of terrible players and then trade a bunch of picks for players that they don't intend on re-signing. But I wanted to quickly hit on this before we touch on just one of the 2 NHL topics, because we're both obviously exhausted and we don't want you guys to have to listen to an hour of us bitching about the team direction for the 4th straight week.
For the 8th year in a row. Like we literally did the show last year. We literally did the show last year, right down to the whole this game is going to decide what the Canucks do. Like, we did this all last year. This is a repeat. This is just the same show over. I'm done. Why?
I know. We can just start copying and pasting last season's episodes.
Straight up. We need what is it? What is it, like the DJ Tron or whatever from The Simpsons? Those clowns in Congress did it again. What a bunch of clowns. Like, we just need that.
So up to date.
Yeah. Like that's literally where we're at here. It is. I'm so tired. Tired.
I am exhausted too. I just wanted to hit on this one thing because I don't know if anyone else really talked about this. I tweeted about it because it bothered me more than I think a lot of other people did, which was Bo Horvat's quote after it was either one of the homestand losses or the Colorado loss, where he credited the team's poor performance to being a one-off. And I quote tweeted the quote being like, at this point, you can't keep saying the team's like lack of performance and not showing up to play is a one-off. When you have several one-offs in a single season, it's no longer a one-off. It's just who you are as a team. And through Bo Horvat's captaincy, through his tenure as a Canuck, they have had more one-offs. And if you're watching our YouTube channel, you can see me using some brilliant air quotes when I say one-off, because there's been so many of them that is now just their identity. The Vancouver Canucks are a team that either shows up, plays run and gun hockey, bleeds chances, but scores like crazy, or they don't show up at all.
Yeah, or there's this team which just hasn't done either.
Or there's this team where they are just the latter and they can't do the former. And I hated seeing that quote and people being like, "Oh, Horvat, he cares, his give a fuck meters through the roof." And it's like, I'm sorry, I don't think that's true. I don't. I
just think about like what in his particular case, what else can he really say?
Of course, like,
right? Like,
there is that
that's
caveat,
the hard
like
part.
he can't chew out his teammates. He knows he played like shit,
Yeah,
so he can't be like, "Oh, this is just who we are. We're a bunch of fucking bums," because
God
then
no,
he'll get
like
traded,
no,
right? Like
yeah,
that.
exactly. It's
He'll
literally a
never
case
say
of
that. But hearing the specifics of, this is a one-off, like that quote doesn't work either because of just how consistently like absent this team is on a season-to-season basis. Like even when Markstrom and Tanev were a part of the team, they would have nights where they just didn't show up. And
Yep.
so stop
And to be fair, every
blaming it.
NHL team has those, but the Canucks have them
The best
more often
teams,
than others.
the best teams can still have nights where they don't show up as a whole and still win games because all it takes is one or two to make a difference. But consistently with this Canucks team, more often than not, you have Niels Hoglander showing up every single night for the last season and a half, and he's not enough. He had a 3-point night the other day, and it wasn't enough. That is about as telling as it gets.
Good games as well. Brock Besser as well is kind of.
We haven't even really gotten to Brock Besser. Like he's had a terrible season, and we were talking about him last year. It has, like, he was there. They're saying in that press conference, like, oh, looked like he was gonna cry because of how shit they're playing.
God, I saw that was like literally like for a guy who doesn't emote at least in publicly much. Like he's not that guy. He's not that type of guy. He's not a very emotional guy, especially with interviews.
Yeah,
that's about as
emotional as it's gonna get for him,
man. And that is a guy who is an RFA at the end of the season. That is an RFA who famously the Canucks basically all but told they didn't think he was worthy of more money because they don't believe.
They basically said they don't think he's going to be worth his qualifying offer, which is awful because if you're the player, you're sticking to that qualifying offer no matter what. So he's probably gone at the end of this year
unless
if he still underperforms.
Unless somebody smarter comes in. And or also like why would he even want to stay unless there isn't another person there because like clearly they don't because clearly the management team doesn't believe in him. Like he looked broken and I was like, God, this poor guy.
It does suck because he at one point last year, I think in the season recap, we were like Brock Besser was this team's best forward for 99% of the season. It was basically Besser, Hoglander, and then like Horvat here and there. But most of the time, I think you and I were in like agreement that Besser was probably the team's best forward last season.
Yep.
And now here he is. Everyone's just like, okay, this guy isn't doing anything. He sucks. He isn't offering anything. He's not producing. Expiring RFA. Let's trade him and get him for whatever we can. Which, if you're a GM who's just been told publicly that the team needs a shakeup or the fan base is going to chant fire Benning and you're going to lose your job, he's got 2 days to shake up the group. And what better way to do that than to trade your expiring RFA with a qualifying offer you can't afford because you just acquired OEL and Connor Garland and overspent on Tanner Pearson and Tucker Poolman, Travis Hamonic.
I didn't even put that together. Oh,
think about it.
That's so going to happen, isn't it? My God.
It might. I mean, desperate times call for desperate measures. And what better way to shake up Elias Pettersson than be like, hey, your buddy has been underperforming, so we got rid of him.
Like they're gonna do the Pete Canuck thing of, guys, we got back Tyler Toffoli. Just don't ask how.
Ask how, but we did.
I mean, they might be willing to shop Tyler Toffoli considering they're not going and the Canadiens aren't going anywhere fast. They might be willing to. Which, God, that would be such Pete Canucks for them to like go like, hey, but guys,
trade another asset for him.
We got Tyler Toffoli. We trade specifically to trade Besser for Toffoli straight up and be like, guys, you're so negative. We got back Toffoli. We did what you wanted. Why are you complaining? God, that would be so on brand. I hate that we spoke that into the universe. Yeah, that's gonna come true, and we're gonna never live, and it's gonna be our fault. That will be our fault.
You can blame me for that one. I'll take the hit.
You're joking at the beginning of the show, but that is our fault if that.
I'm sorry, everyone. Let's move on. Let's quickly touch on an NHL topic because it has to do with your boys, your former boys, the San Jose Sharks, kind of. So if you don't know, the Ottawa Senators are dealing with like a massive COVID outbreak right now. They've got like a bunch of players that are out currently, and the NHL decided to postpone the Senators' next 3 games to later dates in the season. And I think it was Patrick Johnson or someone else that retweeted an opinion by someone that was saying, if you're the San Jose Sharks and you're seeing Ottawa's schedule get bumped, like, how pissed are you? Because they were just forced to play, I think, 3 or 4 games, missing 7 of their core regulars, including Couture, Meyer, Dahlin. I think Burns was out too, or Carlson, like one of the two. Like they were missing basically their core of their team, and I think they still did pretty well. Like they're playing really well, all things considered.
Yeah, they've done way better than expected. They're pretty good.
And considering they've had a COVID outbreak, like you wouldn't expect them to be where they are at in the standings right now. But how pissed would you be if you had to deal with, it's like the Canucks thing where they had their giant outbreak and the league asked them to play immediately on return. And here's the Sharks. They had to fight through it. They had to play regardless of the outbreak they were facing. And then another team with an outbreak that's probably just as bad as theirs was gets a pass or gets a schedule bump. That's, I mean, the NHL isn't exactly known for handling issues properly, especially when it comes to protocols and safety of its players. But man, like what a joke.
It's a very weird. You know what? Knowing the NHL, what it's come down to is literally like a case of, is the team in question going to complain? And the Ottawa Senators are a team that I think, like, and rightfully so. Let's be clear here, rightfully so. Are more like the way that their ownership and their management are structured are more likely to be a team like that's like, hey, yeah, we need you to pause our games right now, and we're not gonna let you go on this. Whereas San Jose is a team I think that is much more like we'll do more of a passive, I guess is the best way to put it. Like they're a management group and an ownership group that is much more like, oh, we'll just do whatever the NHL wants. It's not that big a deal. It's not a big deal to them. Because I mean, maybe the Sharks complained and just got nothing out of it. I don't know, possibly.
Maybe.
But it is frustrating that the NHL, after seeing what happened to the Canucks last year, still tried to pull the whole, you'll be fine. Just put some Advil, have some Advil. You'll be good to go. The one good thing about these particular cases is that all these players are vaccinated at the very least. So they're not their symptoms are not going to be as bad. Like they're not going to, well, hopefully anyway.
Hopefully, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know for sure. But I would assume it's not as serious as it was, say, with the Canucks, where they had players where, they weren't vaccinated. They were clearly not going to have any sort of immunity built up to it. So they were, it was going to wreak havoc. I mean, here it's clearly wreaked havoc, but in a different sort of way. The vaccine helps, of course, like keep the spread a little bit lower, but it's not going to, completely get rid of it. So you have to just, And I don't know why the NHL had to sit on its hands for this. I don't know why the Senators really would have had to complain so much to get it to stop, because to get some time here, because God, they just give it to them. Good Lord.
Yeah. We're obviously exhausting ourselves talking about the Canucks, so we won't go on a little bit too longer. Just one last thing here that's pretty great. And since this is basically a goalie podcast, shout outs to Zach Fucale.
Yeah.
8 years after getting drafted, he finally makes his NHL debut for the Washington Capitals. And what does he do in beautiful, poetic fashion? He gets a shutout. That's pretty great. Good for him. Didn't he get drafted by like Montreal or something?
I think you're right. I think he got drafted. I think if I remember correctly, he got drafted by Montreal. Montreal's had a string of like tough draft picks in the goaltending department since Carey Price. They've never really found like that.
I remember when they drafted Fucale, it was like all they talked about on the broadcast was like, oh, this guy is going to be the number 2 to Carey Price, guarantee it in like a couple years. And there was all these like lofty expectations thrown on him.
Yeah. he really struggled, and he really struggled to. That was a lot of pressure to put on him, and especially in that market, he's a French Canadian kid. And being asked to go like to be literally the successor to Carey Price, and yeah, that's a lot of pressure for a guy. He never really was able to live up to it, but he finally now he's moved on. I believe this might be his third team, I think, since the Canadiens at this point, like, or at least organization anyway.
Yeah, he went from Montreal to I think Tampa, or he played for like a bunch of AHL teams before landing with Washington for the last 2 years. He spent actually all of last year, most of last year, with the Hershey Bears, and before that, he was in Tampa's ECHL team, the Solar Bears, for like the entire season, as recently as 2019-2020. So he's on the way up, man. That's pretty nuts.
He was a Golden Knight briefly in 2018. And then or like 2018-19, and but like after training camp, they sent him down to the ECHL Fort Wayne Comets. Damn. So he has worked his way back up the hard way.
Yeah.
And the interview he had, like, because he got a shutout in that game, he gets a shutout in his first NHL win. Like, holy cow, his NHL debut. Like,
yeah.
And the interview after was iconic. Like, he was just like.
Cute.
It was very
so happy. He didn't know what to do with his headset after the interview, and he like embarrassed himself on like the broadcast. Like, it was really great.
Like,
really
in one of those endearing ways. Like,
yeah. Not in like a mean-spirited Cody hates everything way, but like a genuinely like it was cute. Other than that, folks, we are so sorry that another episode has been just like 45 minutes of us bitching. But this is really what the Canucks does to us. What it does to you. Put down your pot of coffee. Take a load off.
Okay, I'll ask you this to kind of like a couple things to just like close out here. Like, what, like, in terms of like, what, like, because you're going to be on the next Monday show. Now I'll say this, like, if anything happened, I think we'd have to pull you up for an emergency show. Yeah, we'd find time for an emergency show.
Hopefully it doesn't happen on Friday or Saturday, because that is my buddy who I shouted out in our last episode. That's his wedding day. So I would really
so it'll definitely happen then.
So it'll absolutely happen as he is walking down the aisle, and I need to step out and do a live reaction.
Yeah, or you just like suddenly you just start like you just jump up in the middle of like the thing, and everyone's like, "Oh, nothing."
They did it.
That would be pretty funny. But do you think there'll be any changes by in theory by the next time you record?
Now that I've seen that tweet from Taj1944 about what Satyar Shah is hearing, I genuinely wonder if even there's just like a minor amount of people saying, chanting fire Benning, fire Green, if we see wholesale changes, if they lose. If they win and people chant, it might. I mean, this team is so, like, they were not even in the playoff contention in 2019-20 when they traded away a giant package for Tyler Toffoli to spark up their team because they were convinced that they were going to go on a run. And they didn't even go on a run to make playoffs. They got in because of the play-in series. Like,
they got in because of a pandemic.
Yeah, like at that point, arguably, if there was no pandemic, like, you really have to wonder if the team didn't go on any kind of run, if they would actually have been sellers instead of buyers trying to salvage their careers. Because that's what that trade was. It was them just trying to delay the inevitable, and it fortunately worked out for Jim because it got him another 2 years.
The pandemic saved his job. The pandemic totally saved his job. Like,
yeah, it extended the pandemic extended his shelf life by at least 3 seasons, like, easily.
This is year 2, and this is year 2.
Or sorry, 2 seasons. Okay, sorry, not 3. Yeah. I mean, hopefully not 3. You never know. But
well, he technically this is his last guaranteed year. He does have it's an option year is the next one. So this technically is the last year of his contract. So all right, good. Continue.
Oh, I don't even know what I was saying, but.
if you think there'll be any change at all by the time, like if it is based entirely off the crowd,
if they're legitimately like, we're gonna base it on like the crowd's reaction and like the team result, like if they lose and people are chanting, yeah, he's probably gone. So it's probably Green too. But given that they just signed him to a giant, like, multi-million-dollar extension, he might stick around, and Benning just might be the guy gone to salvage or save face in front of the fan base.
Yeah.
If they win,
the worst possible result out of this would be that, say, that wouldn't be, yeah, I mean, okay, like, winning cures all, so, but yeah, probably that's up there, but like, or like they win a scrappy, like, game that they didn't necessarily deserve to win. It was just a lot of, like, luck on their side kind of thing. But no, what I was going to say is the worst possible thing would be like Travis Green getting the axe only. Like a case where people completely single him out as the scapegoat and why the team is bad. And he's the one that gets kicked to the curb, because again, that when the GM gets to, when a new coach is needed, that's the GM getting an extended life, like more extended life. Like, they wouldn't let Jim Benning hire another coach if they were going to just axe him at the end of the year anyway. So
this regime has surprised us many times in the past, however. So who's to say?
Who's to say? Yeah, we shall see if they do it. I'm gonna say that I'm apathetic enough at this point that I'm like, I'm very much in the case of I'm gonna believe it when I see it. Like, I'm not gonna even suggest that it might happen, really, because, like, in terms of, like, if I think I don't think it will. Like, I just don't. I will believe it's happening when I see it, because again, this happened last year. This whole situation, minus people in the building, happened last year, and nothing changed. It happened the year before. It happened the year before, kind of, like at the beginning of the season, and nothing changed. And then nothing changed. Like, it's been 8 years of this. I'm sick of waiting for that sort of shoe to drop. So I am not going to get my hopes up about it, because I don't feel like I've been disappointed enough in my 24 years on this earth.
Yeah, fair. That's probably the best attitude to have about it. Just, hope for the best, be positive,
and hope the players do well. Hope the
players return to having fun, because at the end of the day, hockey is supposed to be an escape and it's supposed to be fun. So if your appreciation or enjoyment of the NHL club is resulting in you being as miserable as you and I are while recording this podcast, then take a break. Don't watch the team. Vote with your dollar and your conscience. Not tuning in, not buying tickets, not buying merch. That is one hell of a way to tell this organization that you're sick of being miserable trying to watch this team. And
that's not us saying calling for like a boycott or something. It's just like, that's what they listened. That's what they will listen to in your case. I did see one thing today where apparently this is real. This is some season ticket holders actually tried to cancel, and
they weren't allowed to, right? Yeah,
they couldn't. There was some weird clause in there about that, which is real shady.
A little bit.
See it. Oh boy. That's how they just. Oh god. But yeah. Voting with your dollar is it's literally the main tool a consumer has over the market, is to vote with how they spend their money. If you don't like what you're seeing, you can spend money on other things. There are lots of the Whitecaps just made the playoffs. Go give them your money instead, like or what have you, like whoever, like. Go. There are other people. There's other great entertainment in town that you could go to instead and enjoy. Probably much more. Support your local arts.
Support your local podcast like this one, because you know what? We've got a Patreon at patreon.com/CreaseCast. We've also got our Teespring, which is also advertised on our Patreon and in our link description at lachandcrease.com. You can find my stuff. I don't think you can pay for my stuff, but I'd appreciate it if you went to my website, ahlnucksharvest.com, and clicked all the links so I could maybe afford a brand new car. That'd be really appreciated. But support local.
Cody needs a Porsche, guys. Cody needs a Porsche.
Papa needs a Porsche. You can find me at Twitter, at Cody Sievertson. My Instagram is ahlnucksharvest.com. Lachlan, where can the fine folks find your work and support you instead of the Canucks?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease. You can also find my writing work at CanucksArmy.com. I am God, I'm trying to find something nice to talk about, to write about. It's very hard. But I'm writing there quite a bit. Go check that out. And also in regards to Cody's website, you should go check it out because I think he just put up a bunch of like new pages on stats and everything.
Oh, that's right.
Tracking and everything.
Yes,
you should definitely plug that. You should plug that. Like
I should plug that. I forgot about that. I finally, after multiple years, found a way to post stat pages that will be periodically updated. So you can, instead of sending me DMs asking me how so-and-so looked, you can just check out their stats and it'll be all there for you. How they're doing at 5v5, on the power play, on the penalty kill, individually. It's all going to be there. I'm going to be trying to track as soon as we're done recording and try to start working on the Abbotsford Canucks 2-game homestand versus the San Jose Barracuda. Your former boys, the Barracuda. Exciting series. I'll have those stats hopefully by this Friday. I will not be recapping this Friday because I'll be at a wedding for my buddy who is just a delightful human being. And
shout out.
Yeah. Until then, guys, we'll catch you next time. Hopefully we have something positive to talk about, or at least something that makes us crack a smile and laugh a bit more.
Be kind to each other.
Yes. Be kind, be well, stay safe.
Hug your loved ones. Bring an umbrella. Flooding has been
shout out to anyone in the interior of BC right now who's been displaced by the massive amounts of flooding. It's fucking terrible. As much as we bitch and complain about the hockey
Canucks,
team, there are much fucking worse things going on in the world. Yeah. My car problems are peanuts compared to the shit that people in the interior are dealing with. Even people in Abbotsford that are dealing with. So shout out to you guys. Sorry to see what's going on out there, and we love you, and we'll catch you. Stay safe, and we'll catch you on our next episode, everybody. Bye.